It's like Roglic, Vingegaard. If you're gonna mention Remco,
What?
you got to mention Roglic. Oh, Pogacar, Vingegaard, rather. Like these guys, like you say one of their names, you got to say the other one.
Right, okay. I would have said Matcha Van der Poel, what we're not, but sure.
Yes, that one as well. That one's
Yeah,
perfect.
but I mean, the Netflix series, the trailer dropped this week as well, or last week. And what did you guys think of this? This is the guys who were behind Drive to Survive, which I think is an amazing series. My Formula One fans don't think that, and we kind of fit into that kind of end of it. It's built as like grabbing new people's attention, elevating the sport. There's also been a tennis one and a golf one. They seemed a bit weird. So, do you think it's going to be a hit? And if so, why? And I'll tell you why I
Uh,
think it won't be.
Anybody who's an existing cycling fan will probably watch it. I don't mean that everybody's going to watch it, but I think most people will be interested to see what kind of extra things they might learn about what goes on in the Tour de France because, you see some stuff on teams' Instagrams and stuff which is a little bit behind the scenes, but I think people want to see the emotion. People want to see, like they saw in Drive to Survive, the kind of the fist smashing, the door kicking, the tensions being frayed. That's what we really want to see because let's face it, I want to see if Jonas Vingegaard swears rather than what we see in his like interviews, which is all very cool, calm, and collected. Because I feel like riders all, apart from like Cav back in the day where he steals reporters' kind of microphones and stuff. All the stuff is relatively like the stage happens and nothing really kind of controversial happens, which makes cycling a little bit beige at time, I must admit, and that comes as, somebody who really likes the sport. So I'm hoping that it's going to provide a bit more action. Do I think it's going to be a hit? I don't think it's going to be as big of a hit as Drive to Survive is going to be. But I think that it will bring some more people into the sport, and I think that will cause its own controversy because then we will have people who know cycling very well who will be very snobbish and like, you don't know cycling like I do. You could have a load of people who don't understand the significance of. There was a clip of like, I don't know, I think it was like Unilad or something put up rock, paper, scissors that Pogacar and Micah did. And people who didn't understand cycling were saying, why are these two people who are on separate teams doing rock, paper, scissors? This is so stupid. So there's going to be a teething period. I don't think it's going to be as good as Drive to Survive, but I think it's going to be a net positive. That's my take.
I think it's going to be okay. The initial trailer was like leaked in the end of February. And I thought like, okay, maybe some things will change. That was like a leak. Nothing changed. It's the same one, except now the series has a name, Unchained. Not quite sure about that one. It doesn't even like I was thinking as well, does it work in French? Unchained, like it doesn't really work either. So whoever sort of verified and like passed that to be the name of this series, it's a little bit questionable, but I think the series will be fine. I'm sure there will be plenty of sort of, as you said, gatekeeping of people saying like it's not as good. Like cycling, name five cyclists. The Tour de France, name six tours. Like shit like that. Where I mean, it happens in F1. People love to gatekeep, especially like big hardcore fans. They love gatekeeping, but I feel like it's all this really should be used as a vessel to help other people get into the sport. Cycling is a very inaccessible sport from a sort of I don't want to how do I say this without sounding pretentious? From an intellectual perspective, in terms of there's so
You went
much going
there.
on. Like there's there's so much. How do you concisely explain to someone why there's a breakaway up the road with 112 kilometers to go on a flat stage? How do you explain that? Oh yeah, it's fine. They might have 11 minutes and 55 seconds of a lead over the peloton, but it's all going to come together in the end, and there'll be a bunch sprint. But why is there a bunch sprint? Why doesn't someone try to attack and go on all alone on a flat stage? Why isn't the sprinter winning the Tour de France? These questions that I mean we've all had to like wrestle with as cycling fans and explain to non-cycling viewers. It's not a simple sport. It really isn't. It takes a lot of time to sort of get used to the rules and the dynamics of cycling. It's a lot of trial and error, more than many sports. I'm trying to think of one that's even similar in terms of like the sort of the level of information you kind of need to find the sport accessible and understandable, I think is really tough. In like a football, it's fairly straightforward. Rugby, yeah, that's a little bit more difficult. I watch a lot of ice hockey. That's fairly straightforward as well. Whereas cycling is just so much harder. So I think this Netflix series, if it kind of demystifies a lot of these things a little bit to help people come in, I know it might be dumbed down or whatever, or like it's very simplistic, but I think that's going to help it a lot because LDS Menos Pensado, it's brilliant. I love it. The Movistar series on Netflix. I love it, but that didn't bring new people into the sport. You don't hear about people who've discovered cycling because they watched El Día Menos Pensado. Like that's just not a thing.
Kind of like a make or break point with cycling, which is the fact that maybe cycling slowly gets viewers every year. Like maybe a few come, a few go. Like it goes up a little bit every year. This is the one chance which cycling really has, which has a chance to really boost this. And if it fails, like cycling is just going to go back to being a non-mainstream sport that not that many people care about apart from dive-hard people. And like more people watch the tour every year. So basically, this is why I think that it needs to hit the mark really well, is because if it doesn't, cycling will remain a non kind of like a sport which people don't particularly care about. They will just remain with their side versus side kind of games, sports, because that's relatively like easier to like access for a layperson. I just think that cycling needs to really, hopefully it hits really well and explains the emotion also of victories. Why is it important that Jumbo have won it this year? It's because they've gone through a couple of years of heartbreak of Roglic not doing well. Well, why do people care about Roglic? Like, what's the whole emotion behind that? Why is it important that Hugo Hull won the stage? Why is that important? Why does it matter that we're going up the Galibier? Why does that matter? And it needs to be all these little intricacies, which we all know needs to be somewhat explained in an easy to digest way to somebody new to the sport. And that's going to be very hard to do over a few episodes or whatever that are 40 minutes long or whatever.
Yeah, I think Drive to Survive also had they have 20 drivers. There will always be 20 drivers at each race, well, except if you're Latifi. But the point is, there's 200 riders or whatever. They might not even finish the stage. And it's just, it's such a complicated vessel. And we also talked about the fact that cycling, why is it only Pogacar, Jonas Vingegaard going up there when they have a whole team? Someone said that cycling is the only sport where it's a team sport an individual sport being practiced by teams, which is like, when you think about it, it's so strange.
I think that's why this is going to be so important at demystifying a lot of these things, but they also have to push on certain narratives as well. There are some great stories from last year's Tour de France. Fabio Jakobsen winning a stage, often overlooked, huge moment in terms of people I know that I've showed the crash to from the Tour of Poland in 2020. They were shocked, and they want to know more about the Jakobsen story. You could put that into 30 minutes of an episode. There are plenty of narratives that you could really focus on through it. It is difficult how in cycling there are sort of 200 people in the peloton, whereas in F1 there's 20 drivers. A lot of them have quite interesting backstories in terms of lavish lifestyles. A lot of people whose parents were a dynasty of drivers and a lot of money. Let's put it that way. With cycling, I don't think it's quite the same personality level. I don't feel like in cycling we're drawn to certain people because their personality or their personal narrative. Whereas in F1, I think that was more of a point of intrigue to that series. In El Día Menos Pensado, there was a little bit of focusing on a couple of riders' narratives, especially in the leaders. There was a big bit in the first series about looking at Carapaz. They went to his hometown in the middle of nowhere in Ecuador and talking about how he ate loads of spinach as a kid because he wanted to look like Popeye and be strong. You could do that kind of thing with the cyclists and the riders in Tour de France Unchained. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fine balancing act of making it accessible to the masses who will probably pay for a second series if there was one.
It's a shame that this wasn't done when Van der Poel won up the Mer de Bretagne, because that would have been super cool.
It would have been, but the rest of that one, after Pogacar attacked in Col d'Orme,
true.
What story do you have apart from Pogacar just being emphatic and strong?
It's true.
2021 wasn't a huge narrative year, I don't think. Apart from Van Aert with his 3 stages. But 2022, I think it's quite neat that they chose that one because there are a lot of individual narratives and stories that you can pick up along the way.
Yeah.
That hopefully
you also had the Cavendish almost bringing Merckx as his record. That was 2021. Yeah. So there was a few in there.
Yeah. It was just that the GC was lame.
And the Bahrain moment. For legal reasons, we shouldn't talk about that too much. But that was a point of intrigue as well in the 2021 edition.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. June 6th, that's when it comes out. So it's going to get a little bit of a lead up. June 8th.
But the language question. I know some commentators have been pushing and worried about the question of language because the trailer, a lot of it's in French. You have Steve Chanel, former rider, French Eurosport commentator, who does a lot of the sort of Will Buxton style backing narrative. He's doing that a lot in the trailer. A lot of the audio was in French in the trailer. Does that mean that it's mostly going to be in French? Is that a problem for you?
I don't mind so much. I find it quite nice because I'm actually trying to learn French, so it'll actually be quite
same. So I'm fine.
stimulating in a way. But not everybody's going to be in that scenario, of course. I think that it would be a little bit. It would not be that great considering that. Yeah, I think that it would be easier if it was just in English. I think that. Well, then again, people put subtitles on for a lot of things nowadays, anyways. So I don't know if it makes a massive difference, but I think it would perhaps be a bit better if. I just think it'd be nice if like Rob Hatch was doing the Will Buxton part. To be honest with you, I think that he's culturally kind of very in the know about the history of cycling, and he's very just in the know about the current state of cycling as well. So I think that he would have been a better person, perhaps, from an English-speaking perspective. But it'll be a deal breaker for some people, but not for me.